Yes, Zelman.
How did you manage that?
Good morning, everybody, and welcome to this Regional Transport Committee meeting for the 14th of September. And a special welcome to you all, particularly with us in this new technical age. I hope it all works for us. Just to remind you that we are live streaming, so start your comments accordingly. I do have to read a statement, which I will do, which is a standard formality with regards live streaming. I just wish to remind committee members that the public section of this meeting is being recorded and live streamed. The webcast will be archived and made publicly available on Council's website within 2 days, after the meetings for a period of 3 years. Our purpose is to provide greater access to Council debate, decision-making and encouraging openness and transparency. However, having said that, Council accepts no liability for any individual opinions or statements. This is in accordance with Council's live streaming and recording of meetings and protocols, which can be viewed on our Council website. I also remind all present that local government decisions and the decisions made affords no protection to committee members, Council officers and the public for comments made during the meetings that are subsequently challenged in a court of law and determined to be slanderous. And I just remind you all, please ensure your videos are all now turned on for the duration of this meeting and your microphones are off unless when you are speaking. So, as I said, a very warm welcome to everybody. This is high technology, so let's just bear with one another and let's get through this. In terms of the order of items, in terms of apologies, I have apologies received from Mayor Malcolm Campbell and Deputy Mayor Tunui of the Kawerau District Council, Deputy Mayor Dave Donaldson from the Rotorua Lakes Council, Commissioner Anne Tolley and Commissioner Selwood have indicated an early departure of 10:25. Is that still correct, Commissioner Selwood? You're leaving at...
Yes, 10:25.
Okay.
Commissioners are meeting with the Minister at that time, so...
Thank you so much. Colleagues, are there any further apologies?
Mr. Chair, David here. Hey, yes, can I also proffer my apologies for 10:25 because I'm joining Commissioner Selwood, etc., with the Minister.
But you'll be back with us at 11:30.
I will be back with you at 11:30, yes.
Thank you so much. So there's no further apologies. I will so move. Seconded Mayor Chadwick. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you so much. There is no public forum. There are no items that are not on the agenda or late items. The declarations of conflict of interest pertaining to this meeting. Are there any? There are none. Moving on to the minutes, and I have been told that these have not been ratified. So those with good memories, please go back to your recall. We are on page 7 and we're dealing with the minutes of Wednesday the 9th of June 2021. Would someone who was at that meeting move those as a reasonably true and accurate record of that meeting? It's been moved. Deputy Mayor Isles, is there a second to Councillor Nees? Any matters arising, anybody? Going through those pages. Through to page 17. Is Worship Mayor Webber, page number? Mayor Webber? Mayor Webber, you haven't got your volume on.
in terms of matters arising, I just wanted noted that the final outcome of the Wakakotahi analysis showed that their weightings were totally different to ours. It gives me no pleasure to say I told you so, but I also wish everybody to note that on page 21 of the National Land Transport Plan, it reads,
Your Worship, we're not up to that item yet. Can you speak to the minutes, please, of Wednesday, the 9th of June?
Sorry, I thought, well, I'll wait to those then. Sorry.
Okay, so are there any further items pertaining to the minutes of Wednesday, the 9th of June?
Yes, sir. Sorry, I'm still there on page 16.
Page number, Your Worship?
Page 16.
Page 16, yes.
At the bottom of the key points, the last bullet requested a level of independence of the RLT process. I just want to know who's going to do that independent review for us, please. I don't need to know now. I'd like it so we're all aware of what the process is.
Okay, Mayor Webber, I will pass over to Namuta, who will share with you the current status of that and where it is sitting at this point in time. Namuta.
Tēnā koutou to the Chair and committee members. Just to confirm that an independent review of why the TNL Stage 2 has not been included in the RLTP is underway, and Dave Brash is completing that piece of work.
Thank you.
Okay, there any further matters arising? There being none, I will put those minutes. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you so much. For the benefit of other politicians who are present, I will make a captain's call, and as I normally do, in light of the huge challenges that we're confronting with regional transport in the Bay of Plenty, I will afford any politicians who are present, politicians only, speaking rights. But of course, in the event that we have to take a vote, they cannot vote. So that's as a courtesy to your politicians that are joining with us today to make this a little bit more inclusive. So can I move over to the Regional Land Transport Hearing Subcommittee minutes of Friday, the 28th of May? Would someone who was present there move those as a reasonably true and accurate record? Deputy Mayor Isles and Commissioner Selwood. I note, Your Worship, you have your hand up.
Yes, I did. I want to take you back to the previous thing where I was talking in response to...
Are we back on the previous minutes, are we?
Yes, where I started to talk and you said I was on page 5.3, endorsement of the 2021 Regional Land Transport Plan. The point I was trying to make is that we used the weightings, which it was fatally flawed, in my opinion. But I take you to page 20 of the National Land Transport Fund, where it reads, in broad terms, funding is prioritised using the following tiered investment approach. First bullet point, activities that have been previously approved for funding and are continuing to be delivered in 2021-24. I just want everybody to note that, because we did not do that. Thank you.
Your comments are noted. Okay, would someone move those as a reasonably true and accurate record of that meeting?
They've moved and seconded.
They've been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Move them on to the 28th of May.
They're just for receipt.
Okay, the minutes of the 28th of May are for receipt. Moving, and likewise the 30th of April.
28th of May has been moved and seconded for confirmation.
Yes.
13th and 14th of April is for receipt.
Okay, they're for receipt. Do you want to move in a second of those?
No,
we don't need movers and seconders.
I'm sorry, you do need a mover.
We do need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Nees, are you happy? And Deputy Mayor Isles. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Moving over to the chairperson's report, everyone, on page 37, and I will pass over to James. James, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Just James, just pause a moment. Mayor Webber, you had your hand up. You want to speak, Mayor Webber?
No, not for me. I should have taken it down, sorry.
That's okay. James, lead on. We're on page 37, colleagues.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Chair. I would just like to ask that the report is taken as read and happy to answer any questions on it.
Questions on the chairperson's report? There being none, I will move it. Seconded, Mayor Chadwick. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Councillor Nees, page number.
Sorry, I'm talking about the Regional Transport Committee work programme, which is in the report. Is it appropriate for me to ask a question here?
Certainly, item 7.1, yes.
Okay, I just wondered whether we've got a couple of gaps in our work programme that should be programmed in. I'm just really conscious that we've got a major lot of reform happening at the moment, and I read that the Spatial Planning Act may include some reform of the Land Transport Management Act, and that some of those provisions around transport may be pulled into the Spatial Planning Act. So I think it would be perhaps we should be thinking about receiving advice and maybe even submitting on the implications of regional transport planning on behalf of the RTC over the next year. So just whether that happens through the chairperson's report or a separate item on legislative changes. Because we've also got the carbon reduction budget, which is likely to be released by central government sometime this year. And this will surely have transport implications that the Regional Transport Committee may want to consider. And lastly, we used to have periodic presentations from the Ministry of Transport on what their work programme is and what the implications are for regional transport committees and the way we deliver transport. And I'm thinking here about road pricing and congestion charging. And also we used to invite KiwiRail to give a presentation on their business plan and work program. So I just wondered whether those sort of items need a home somewhere in our work program, Mr. Chair.
We did call for feedback, and which is ongoing, so I'll pass over to Namuta. Namuta?
Yes, so through the chair, we can include those as part of the chairperson's report in the future.
Okay, we've got a number of hands up, starting with His Worship, Mayor Webber. Your Worship.
Yeah, thank you. I just wonder if we're getting a bit ahead of ourselves. Let's see what comes out of the reform process before we start knee-jerking around on this. And just bear in mind that I think individual territorial authorities might want to put their own opinion to the world rather than a combined one from the Regional Transport Committee. I'm starting to lose faith in the Regional Transport Committee.
Okay, your comments are well noted and well known. Okay, Glenn.
Yeah, good morning. I think Mayor Webber sort of partly answered my question, which was, will emissions reductions target be part of this mandate of this committee, or will they be addressed only at a district or city level?
Namuta.
So through the chair, as part of the Regional Land Transport Plan, we have an emissions reduction target, so we will need to report on that as part of the Regional Transport Committee.
Just a quick follow-up, meaning will the plan, I was perhaps a little clumsy in the wording, like will the actual plan itself to deliver the target, you know, with the detailed emissions reductions from various projects, will that be carried out sort of under the guidance of this committee, or will there be will it be with each territorial authority?
Through the chair, we're just working with the local authorities at the moment in terms of how best to present and report on that, but we will be reporting on how we're going to meet the target.
Good morning, Mayor Chadwick. Her Worship, Mayor Chadwick. Yeah, sounds off, Mayor.
Right, and thank you for bringing up the issue of the carbon reduction. We'd rather put them together on our own proposals that we bring to the regional transport. I think they ought to be built into any applications that come to the committee from the local authority. So it's great that you brought that up. Thank you. That's part of our climate change response.
Any further questions or comments, colleagues? There being none, it has been moved and seconded. I'll put it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Can I move you now over to page 45, Good morning, David. Good to have you with us. Big day for you here in Tauranga today, be it not in person. So, floor's yours. The Waka Kotahi Transport Agency update, commencing page 45, everybody.
Morena kia koutou. Do I need to share my screen, or have you got a... Yes, please, I'm seeing. Okay, just bear with me while I figure out how to do that. Should be that one. Okay, is that sharing?
Yep.
Ka pai.
David, are you happy for questions at the end of your presentation?
Yes, Mr. Chair, happy to do it that way. Just give me a moment here. Come on. Okay, so you should be able to see the presentation, Regional Transport Committee.
We can.
Okay, so very quickly, from a national land transport program point of view, that's the big, I guess, the big news of the moment for us, especially. The NLTP 21-24 launched on the 7th of September, a record level of investment in terms of scale, at least $24.3 billion across the land transport system for the next 3 years, targeted at the things we have been talking about as a committee for some time. So a land transport system that's safe, better travel options, with a freight view and connections, but also obviously cognizant of the environmental protection issues that we are having to look at, and particularly carbon reduction. So in that light, you would have seen some changes from previous NLTPs, and that more than 28% of the total investment through this NLTP is being spent on public transport and walking and cycling initiatives. 6.9 billion being spent on maintaining, renewing and building resilience into the existing network, and 3.9 billion in state highway and local road improvements. As part of that NLTP process, government's provided an additional $2 billion of debt financing in this NLTP, and that has enabled us to provide the minimum requirements for each of the funding allocations across the 10 allocation areas, as well as some extra funding, as I said, and particularly in the public transport, walking and cycling areas. And I think the big highlight for us is that that has also given us the ability to meet the minimum maintenance standards for the roading network, which I think is a really important place for us to be at least able to meet those minimum roading standards. In terms of specifics for the Bay of Plenty, $1.4 billion of investment targeted at supporting growth, really making it easier, hopefully, to move around the city and between the cities, ensuring freight connections, and I would put in freight commercial, because I know that's something that we have talked about before, is how to differentiate between freight and commercial connections versus private vehicles, and that is something that we'll continue to focus on for the next NLTP. Safety and resilience has been a big focus, particularly along the essential freight connections along State Highway 2, Tauranga, between Tauranga and Gisborne, and State Highway 29 between Waikato and Tauranga. And you'll also note that as part of the Waikato allocation, the funding of State Highway 1 up to the connection with State Highway 29 in terms of safe connections as well is a big focus. So we're creating that corridor in the safest way possible. We'll continue to work with our local partners, obviously, to try and implement these growth plans. I think given the timing of the release of the NLTP and the scale of the investment, we are going to have to be continually reviewing how we go with implementation of this NLT, particularly in year one. I know there will be some challenges, but we'll work through those together as we go. So notwithstanding that significant investment, I do want to acknowledge that there were some projects that didn't make the program. Noting, of course, that the maintenance spend is sufficient to maintain current levels of service, but not to improve it. And so we would have liked to have been able to do those improvement works, but what we have got is sufficient to manage maintenance. State Highway 2 Te Puna to Omokoroa, we are doing further work to determine what online safety improvements will look like and how to fund that and what funding will be required to progress that. The Rotorua Central Corridor, State Highway 30A, we met with Rotorua Lakes Council yesterday actually to start the discussion about what does that mean for the council and for ourselves in terms of the maintenance program, and then looking forward for what we do with the central connection component, and obviously State Highway 2 Waihi to Omokoroa, no allocation for the central medium barrier, and variation processes underway to look at again what we might do there in addition to the $101 million of project construction that's currently underway. So there's some work to do over the next little while. As you will have seen in the regional transport plan online, we've ranked quite a few of these projects as possibles, and possibles essentially means if and when extra funding does become available or funding is released from other projects, those are the projects that we will put back into the mix to consider for funding. And obviously there's some considerations around deliverability in there as well. State Highway 29 Tauriko Network Plan, the engagement phase for the detailed business case started in May, including those conversations with iwi partners, landowners. Over 1,000 people attended the information days, so huge engagement in that. We got 200 responses to the online survey. So that's really encouraging in terms of the level of engagement we're having there. The two, in the sort of 2 to 3 year time frame, the enabling works detailed business case will identify what those initial improvements are to improve housing, improve safety, support growth of Tauriko business estate. That's being led by Tauranga City Council, and the current program indicates a draft EBC by late 2021 with approval in April 2022. So that's really good. We have indicated, or Waka Kotahi's indicated, will support the 2,000 households unit equivalent with conditions to be implemented within the growth area to support mode shifts. So namely, essentially meeting the UFTI expectations of that 30 dwellings per hectare. We've only just started working on this aspect and how that's going to be delivered. And there's some further conversations underway for Waka Kotahi to lead the pre-implementation and delivery of the project once we've got past the detailed business case process. In the long term, the second detailed business case will confirm the preferred option for Tauriko out to 2063. And we anticipate that we'll be doing some further engagement with stakeholders and landowners before confirming the preferred option. The current timeframe on the long-term DBC is seeking approval in mid-2022, so that designations can follow soon after, obviously subject to funding being available. Just in terms of the dreaded COVID-19, we are still working on what the impacts of COVID-19 are going to be for us and for the wider program. Likely be able to provide some more detail on individual projects over the next couple of weeks. The transition back to on-site work is different for every project because some of the projects that we are delivering are actually strongly driven by contractors and things that come from Auckland. And so the continued lockdown there continues to be an issue for us. But to the extent that we are able, on-site activities back up and running in all of those projects that aren't impacted by that. The initial improvements as part of the Rotorua Eastern Corridor, they're due to commence mid-September, so in the next week or so, with the main contract commencing mid-November. And you'll see the first section of the State Highway 2 Wainui Road to Opotiki is due for completion in October, so that's underway. Bay Link pedestrian and cycling underpass construction well underway, obviously impacted by COVID, and as I said, we'll take the next couple of weeks to kind of review timeframes and what have you as a consequence of that. That's it for the Bay of Plenty projects specifically, but just an update on the Road to Zero program. So you'll know that Road to Zero is our focus on achieving a reduction in deaths and serious injuries on our roads. And there are a range of interventions as part of the wider Road to Zero program, trying to drive action in Waka Kotahi, but also other agencies and in the general public. The aim being 16%. The aim being a substantial reduction in deaths and serious injuries year on year. The highlights over the past year: 16% decrease in the rates of deaths and serious injuries compared to 2018. We've had the Land Transport Drug Driving Amendment Bill introduced. We're in the process of, or have completed, the Accessible Streets Package rule changes, or at least consultation on those, and the Land Transport Amendment Act 2020 is enabling the setting of speed limits. And we've talked about that speed limit rule previously and the implications for the regional transport committees, etc. We've launched the Safe Vehicles program, and we are starting a national road safety advertising program and training, which we anticipate rolling out right through into the early part of next year. So you will see some pretty significant campaigns there in terms of public awareness, trying to start a new conversation that disrupts people's complacent attitudes that it's somebody else's problem, that somebody else is going to get injured, and that, you know, my driving and my approach to being on the road is not the issue. We're also trying to disrupt the acceptance that people will die, and that's just a factor of driving on our roads. The campaign is going to be wide scale across the entire country, and as I said, it will go live, significantly live in January 2022 with some lead up to that. As that comes up, I'll share some more information with the Transport Committee prior to that January launch date for the campaign. In terms of our broader outcomes, one of the things that we have been working on for quite some time is our Partnering with Māori and Pasifika Businesses program. So looking beyond the immediate outputs of our projects and considering what additional outcomes we might be part of with that wider community. We are working with Amotai and suppliers, looking at how we engage with the New Zealand Upgrade program, with iwi consultancies, with traffic control, publishing, etc., marketing and media. And that's all part of, growing that interaction we have and the lasting impact we have with our Māori and Pasifika business community and wider community. Just in terms of Te Herenga o Te Taio, our resource efficiency strategy, we internally are looking at how sustainable our programs are, particularly in terms of a whole life view of the transport system and the transport investments that we make. And this is all part of government's move towards a more sustainable future. So not only in terms of carbon emissions, but also in terms of how we use recycled materials, what kind of waste stream we're producing in the full life of our infrastructure and our investments, reducing the use of new materials to the extent that we can, and we are building in at the moment some milestones for the short to medium term in terms of how we deliver on some stepwise objectives to achieve those outcomes. And that's me for now. So if there are any questions, happy to take those, Mr. Chair. Over to you.
Okay, thank you, David, for a very detailed report. Now, you are controlling your own presentation.
I am, so I have to unshare.
Okay, so we have a number of hands up, starting with His Worship Mayor Webber. So I imagine His Worship will make reference to a particular slide. So can you pull that up when the time comes? So you
can rest assured he won't.
Okay. Your Worship, floor's yours.
Thank you. I have three questions in the order they came up. Firstly, the process to amend the NLTP to cover the Mokara interchange only. How do we trigger that process and who is going to drive it? my first question.
So that process, we have already committed to look at the options required, the options that are available to us in respect of an investment on the interchange only, and we're already doing that work. As and when we have got some concrete options, we will bring that back to this committee for a view, and we will, assuming we have options that are viable, we'll go from there in terms of initiating a review process.
Right,
but at the moment, as we previously discussed, we're still going through the process of actually looking for realistic options that are available to us.
Thanks. My second question is, given the Omokaro interchange is critical to Western Bay, would you be better to, the next talk you talked about is funding the median barrier between Katikati and Omokaro. Would you not be better to use that funding for the Omokaro interchange? It's a far higher priority than the median barrier. I know they're both required, but in terms of our community, that's the higher priority, and when we just wonder why you're even looking for funding that and not putting the funding into the interchange. My second question.
So the whole mix of funding in that network is part of the auctioneering that we're doing, and obviously we've got a board and criteria that we have to use as part of that assessment. But you can rest assured that we are looking at the full investment suite available.
Right, thanks. And my final question, and I just cannot keep the lid on the cynic in me. On page 49 in your, and I don't want to shoot the messenger, but on page 49 of your report for this meeting, the third bullet point under Tauriko Network Connections, it reads, good progress is being made with Tauranga City Council to finalise the program and delivery model for the early enabling works to support the current growth needs in Tauriko. Given the similar program for Omokaro started in 2008, and we still haven't done anything, what's the likelihood of this actually happening soon? Or is it going to fall into the same speed process that Omokaro interchange has?
I'm not sure how to answer that question, except to say we are working on it as we speak, and we're making really good progress.
Well, I question how come we're making progress quickly on that, but the Omokaro one since 2008, we haven't.
I can only comment on the process with the enabling works with TCC at the moment.
I don't want to shoot the messenger.
Yeah.
Okay, Commissioner Selwood, then Her Worship Mayor Chadwick. Commissioner Selwood, good morning.
Good morning, and thank you for the presentation, David. I mean, it's fair to say that we were pleasantly pleased at the amount of funding that came through, particularly given the pre-discussions around the level of funding. Our expectations were suitably lowered. And so from that point of view, it was very positive to see the amount of funding coming through, and particularly the commitment by government to allow financing to come to the table, which I think is a very positive step. So thank you to you and your team for all of the work that has been done along with the Regional Council to get this set of projects to the start line. Notwithstanding that, though, we all understand that what is currently budgeted is a long way away from what we actually need. And at a national level, I noted that there was 3.9 billion of the 24-ish billion that is provided for local road and state highway improvement. That's actually quite a small pie when it's spread across the entire country. We do have the New Zealand Up program that supplements that, but notwithstanding that, a lot of the road user funds that are going into the fund are having to be by necessity spent across a broad spectrum of investments, and consequently the funding pie is too small. So my question is this: what is NZTA and in particular within the Bay of Plenty doing to think about new funding mechanisms that might be able to be used and deployed beyond the current paradigm, because, as I've just alluded, the current paradigm is nowhere near cutting the mustard. And in particular, I refer to the work that has been done on congestion charging and road pricing in Auckland and in Wellington. But the select committee recommendation was that this option should be enabled potentially across the country. Clearly, it is a priority, in my view, for us, and I think there would be value in this committee putting its weight behind that kind of analysis and work as to what the opportunities might be within our region to manage traffic more effectively, increase traffic flow, reduce carbon emissions, and improve productivity, whilst also raising funds for future investment. There are significant upsides, and if we don't start grasping the opportunity, we'll never make progress. Thank you. Long question, I know, but an important one.
David?
So I think the answer to that, Commissioner Selwood, is that firstly, you've got an opportunity today to make that a point to the Minister. What the Minister undoubtedly will reply on that, but I'll leave his words to him, but is that process is underway with the Ministry of Transport, and he has asked for that work to be done and for it to be broader. And when I say we, Waka Kotahi are in my region specifically using Tauranga and the wider bay as an example of some very good projects that lend themselves to those other mechanisms. So yeah, well and truly aware of that, and well engaged in that process as it progresses. But I suggest that's probably a question to put to the Minister today, and you'll get a more reliable answer potentially than the one I'll give, because he knows more about this than I do.
Thank you. And can I say that that will be a specific matter that we, as commissioners, will be raising with the Minister today. Yeah. And in view of the comments Jane made earlier about the future work program of this committee, I would be a strong supporter that important issue is on our work program, and that we are proactive about advancing it.
We've captured that, Commissioner Selwood.
Thank you.
My apologies for taking so long to get to you. Her Worship, Mayor Chadwick.
Thank you, and I would certainly support you there, Commissioner Selwood, about new funding tools discussion with the Minister. Obviously, it's needed when we look at the level of investment that's come our way. And thank you also, David, for having that meeting yesterday. I'm sure we would have itemised our specific concerns. The one that seems really illogical to us, and I thank you for the phone call too, when the funding announcement was made, it sort of gave us a bit of a heads up about where we need to duck and dive. And the illogical is the completion of stage 2 of the Eastern Corridor. So yes, the work is underway up to a value of 35 million, but we've still got a gap to the airport. And it seems odd when we've got the level of contractors working on the road that we can't complete that stage and take them away and bring them back, goodness knows when, 2024. So my question to you was about the pre-implementation and the implementation funding, and we can't see that it's there on the Eastern Corridor. That's one question. The other is the Western Corridor, and that's the safety of traffic in Nongataha Village. And I don't know how little bits can come in this sort of other projects over time, but the finishing of 4-laning from Fairy Springs through to the village is very important for us. That's 2 kilometres. And the last is the Southern Corridor. And we really do ask, with the Peka block and our need to connect with housing aspirations, that we could start an urgent strategic business case with Waka Kotahi. Now, they may have all been mentioned to you yesterday, but I felt I had to put these issues on the public record rather than to the minister. So could you explain pre-imp and imp funding, which we can't see is there and still a gap on the 4-laning? Thank you.
Yes. So firstly, acknowledge the opportunity to meet your team yesterday. It was actually a very productive conversation, and we quickly got all of those things on the table. Yeah, 100% of what you said was on the table and discussed within the time we had. What we have agreed is that we will work on that urgent business case around the Southern Block, and particularly, as you say, as the Peka Block comes on stream, you're going to have some challenges. And we are going to have some challenges, both from a safety point of view, but also from a network point of view. So acknowledge that. In terms of the little bits that you mentioned, one of the things that we said yesterday is, and I hinted at it a little bit before, where I said one of the challenges we're going to have is implementation of this NLTP. And there may be little bits within the NLTP that are, for example, surrendered as part of projects, etc. That said, one of the challenges we're going to have going forward is cost escalations, and you'll all know, because you're all looking at your own programs, the massive increase, for example, in steel that's occurred in a very short period of time. So as we manage those, if those little bits become available, and the Nongataha Safety Works, for example, is a really good example of that, it doesn't need a huge investment, but it does need a focus to do some work in that space. So we want to be continually working with each of you to make sure we know what those little bits look like, and that we understand the priority of them within the region, so that if there is some reallocation opportunity, that we can capitalise on that reallocation opportunity. In terms of the pre-imp versus imp, for something as the size of the Eastern Corridor, of course, that's not a little bit.
No.
And it is so pre-imp essentially is we get the detailed business case in place, we get approval for funding, then the implementation, we start building stuff. So that is something that we have to factor in for the next NLTP, or a variation to the NLTP. And again, that would be something that may come up if there is significant funding surrendered. Of course, we've got to take the view across the whole of the network. So I think that's what we talked to Stavros about yesterday, is let's get ourselves into a position where those little bits are things, and we'll do this with every council, where those little bits are the things we know we can move quickly on, and where these bigger projects that have missed out on funding, and as you say, some of them maybe don't seem as logical as others, we can highlight that through the process as we go. But I can't give you a definitive answer that says, let's do that.
And I don't expect that from you, but I'm glad we've got the discussion underway. My question is with the Housing Infrastructure Fund, because of our housing crisis here, so much of this roading is connected to our ability to achieve our long-term plan aspirations for housing. Is there any funding through the Housing Infrastructure Fund, the acceleration fund, that we could use?
So we can apply for that, and so when I say we, yes, you can apply for that to the extent that it releases housing. Yes. I can't speak to how much of that is available, the process from here. I do know there's been a rush of applications already. Yeah,
we know, and we're part of that. We're all part of that, but we're trying to get these things finished to connect. Thank you.
And look, David, you can rest assured that one of the things that I'm really proactive about, and as are all the DRRs, is ensuring that the board and the minister, when we have the opportunity, are aware of where those issues lie.
I'm mindful that, David, you and Commissioner Selwood have got to slip away in a couple of minutes to be with the minister. Mayor Riestra, one quick question to David, and if he has to slip away, we'll certainly take on board your comments and get the answers that you require. Mayor Riestra.
Morena koutou. Thank you, Chair. Mine's more of a general question, and actually part of your answer just to Chadwick actually gives me a little bit of a look at how you want to approach this. But when you looked at the Bay of Plenty working with us on our regional plan, you actually said you'd work with local partners to implement our regional growth plans. And then you said, obviously there would be challenges, but you would work through those together with us.
Yep.
Could you please just elaborate on what you think are obviously the challenges, or are they, and that could be a general comments, or are they just more, you're thinking they're more specific for each of the districts?
All right, so
thank you.
So Mayor Roostra, yes, we're really cognizant that the challenges are different in each area, and that depending on the scale of your program, but also your own context, those challenges are different. I think one of the big challenges we're going to have going forward very initially is actually our capacity and capability to deliver on what is actually a very, very large program. And of course that will vary depending on place. That's why the intent with the regional team, the regional leadership team, is we will be coming to each of you for those conversations, rather than trying to do this, have a conversation at this table. This table will give us our oversight and the wider guidance, but we want to come and talk with each of you about those programs and those specific challenges.
Okay, Glenn, similar comments I had to address to Mayor Roostra. These two gentlemen have to slip away in a couple of minutes. We will be seeing them at 11:30 on another subject, but go for it, Glenn.
Sure. Just sort of quick answers is all I need, David. Thank you. The NLTP has 13.5 million allocated for Cameron Road Stage 1. Yesterday there was a TCC newsletter which talked about 60.5 million plus an additional 13 million allocated for that to deliver traffic signals at some of the avenues. I've got sort of quick questions. One of them is the 13.5 million the same as the 13 million that TCC mentioned in their newsletter? So is it the same thing on top of the 60.5, or is there a 60.5 plus 13 plus 13.5?
My short answer is going to be I don't know, because I don't know. I haven't seen the content of that newsletter, but we can get a quick reply back to you to be really, really clear.
And sort of a follow up is your 13.5 is for PT infrastructure, whereas in the newsletter it talks about 13 for requests from the community for traffic signals at 3rd, 6th and 9th Ave, which did actually provoke a bit of a raised eyebrows amongst some people I knew that the community were requesting those traffic signals. But are you able to also clarify what that PT infrastructure will be, and whether the regional council transport staff are actually supportive of the outcomes of that infrastructure on Cameron Road?
I can't clarify that at the moment because I don't think we're that far down the track. But I can clarify that is the intent of the but we can feed that back.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to have to bring this to its conclusion. David, are you happy to move we receive your report?
I moved.
I'm definitely happy to second it. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. I'm mindful that you two now have to slip away, but as you know, we always end with verbal updates from committee members and advisors. Commissioner Selwood, anything in particular you want to get off your chest at this point in time?
No, I already have. Thank you.
Okay, David?
No, Mr. Chair, actually maybe just to reiterate that I'm picking up on Commissioner Selwood's comment about the lowering of expectations. Just to be really clear, up until 2 months ago, we thought this was going to be a very austere announcement, and so there has been an enormous amount of work and support from Treasury in the last 2 months to make this NLTP possible, and I just think that's worth acknowledging, because as Commissioner Selwood has hinted at, it required quite a little bit flexibility of thinking to actually get this across the line, and so we're very, very pleased. Thank you.
Glenn, is this a quick question? Your hand's up. Is this a quick question?
Sorry, I hadn't taken it down. Apologies.
Okay, Commissioner Selwood and David, you're allowed to leave the class, so we'll see you again at 11:30. Thank you for your contribution. Okay, just a quick whip around. We have no one here today from Kawerau. Councillor Nees, anything you'd like to report on with regards to the Bapedi Regional Council? Nothing. Reportiki, Her Worship, Mayor Riestra, anything at all at this point in time you'd like to put in the middle?
Yes, just that we were very happy with what we've got in for our plan, and looking forward to the continuation of the work that we've got going on with Good, thanks.
Yeah. You can share those comments with the Minister at 11:30, of course.
Okay.
We've lost Commissioner Selwood. Is Worship Mayor Webber anything you'd like to put on the table at this point in time?
No, I think you've heard enough. Happiness doesn't reign strong in our district at the moment.
Okay. Mayor Turner?
Thank you. Look, what our focus is on currently is around the fact that we now, with Wellington acknowledging that we are now growing, that we have some serious work to do in the area of spatial planning, which will then, of course, translate into a whole lot of other infrastructure requirements. So we're focused on getting the basics right at this point, and we'll come back once we have something clear that we can articulate around roading and the likes.
Thank you, Mayor Turner. Glenn, sustainability?
I guess I just raised the issue of the transport emissions reduction plans and the transport emissions reduction group that has been set up in Auckland and some other places to deliver those plans. So I think these, I think they're called TERPs and TERGs are the acronyms, and they seem to be sort of what is needed in many places to get some urgency into emissions targets. So it's raising for a future thing that it seems that's the crucial piece that the Bay of Plenty Committee has currently not got that some of the other committees have.
Okay, we've noted that. John, Freight Advisor, anything you'd like to share with us?
Nothing specific, thank you, Chair.
Okay, Kiwi Rail, just to update you, you know where that all landed. They are awaiting a formal board meeting of Kiwi Rail to nominate their nominee to come to this committee. So a very, very protracted process, as you can well imagine. And we've got no one here from the port today. So that really is the conclusion of this meeting. Oh, Your Worship, Mayor Chadwick.
Thank you. Just thank you for bringing rail, and I do believe, as Commissioner Selwood said, when we look at other funding tools, I do believe we need a rail plan for Taupō, Rotorua, and the Upper North Island for both freight and also for tourism. So that's such a long game when you see this funding shortfall for the region. But if we don't have that plan, I get enthusiasm coming from independent investors saying this is what we'd like to see, but we haven't got the structural plan about what it could look like. I'd like to see us doing some work on that for the wider region. And I've presented my views, but it's pity David's gone. We are enjoying the work thus far on the Eastern Corridor. And at last, we had so many brickbats, and they all thought it was Rotorua Lakes Council, but we are getting now some bouquets that it's starting to flow and look really nice, and the cycleways are being much appreciated. So it shows you that when the rubber hits the road, people see how a plan can come together. Might take years, Councillor Thurston, but we do get there, and we will. So thank you for that. And if that can be recorded back to NZTA as well.
Yeah. Thank you for being positive, Your Worship. In terms of Kiwi Rail, they will be sitting at this table at the next meeting. So I think due thanks must go to Mayor Campbell for his initial big push in that area, and to all of you, all the mayors of the Bay of Plenty who got behind it, and it was finally formally actually gazetted by the minister, as we know, to get them to the table. So this is a discussion that we'll have ongoing, and I know it'll be really good to have them inside the tent. Back to you, Your Worship. Your Worship.
just before you close the meeting, do we use the same Zoom code to come into the Minister's meeting?
No, we don't. It's totally different. The next meeting commencing at 11:30 is an invitation from the Minister's office. You have been... Yeah, well, can we discuss that after we close the meeting? Okay, there's no further business. I will close this meeting and ask you to stay on, so we will see